What's up, everyone? It's Matt Mrozek. I want to give you a quick update on my spray booth. So if you follow me, you saw I built this brand new spray booth right before I did the Hulk because I needed a bigger booth. Well, I did the Hulk and I did the 3 Hellboys, and it seemed like my booth wasn't working very well. And I thought it was because I wasn't getting like airflow into the room, because I usually close this door and I have tape around the door. But it turns out that really wasn't the problem. Let me turn it off real quick so you can hear me. So when I first built this thing, I had the motor. Now the motor I have is a 265 CFM. The Pace booth I was using before, no, sorry, it's a 465. The motor I have right there, this is a 465 CFM. The one that's in the Pace booth that I was using was a 265, so this was almost twice as much power, and it wasn't pulling. I was actually getting blowback. It was blowing back at me a little bit. And I initially had it mounted up here in the corner. So after doing a little research, which I probably should have done beforehand, the reason I was getting blowback is because, first of all, I had a 4-inch ductwork coming out of it, and it was at the top, and it did a kind of a quick turn and then up. So what I did is I moved it to the back of the booth, centered it. It's not quite centered, it's off to the side just a little bit so the ductwork would line up to the hole I had before, so I wouldn't have to drill into a hole in the ceiling. And I increased my ductwork to a 6-inch rigid. So going from to a 6-inch rigid, and not that flexible stuff, because that creates a lot of turbulence inside of it. The semi-rigid, it's more smooth. So now, when I turn this on, I get nothing but pull. No blowback whatsoever. And this is venting into my attic about, 12 feet away into a soffit vent. So I'll show you real quick. So without the filter on, you can see that this is pulling that right in, no problem. My spray booth was covered in overspray, just totally covered. So now that I'm done with the Hellboys, like, this is a good opportunity to kind of redo this before the next projects. And I can tell I'm getting more pull already because it's wanting to suck the filter into place. So I'm gonna put the filter in. This is a 20 by 30 filter, and this is the cheap filter. You don't want to use the super high-end filters because it's too fine, it won't pull the stuff away. But now you put the filter in, I don't know if you can see that, but it's pulling it in pretty good. Before, when I was spraying this, it'd get like, you'd have a big cloud of stuff. So as long as I'm in the booth and I'm spraying this, I'm pulling, just going full out, it's pulling it in. So it's working the way it should. Now I still smell some fumes, but there's no overspray, so big improvement. I can probably actually paint with the door open now if I wanted to and not worry about it, especially when I'm doing like small paint, things. But so if you're doing a spray booth, make sure your ductwork is big enough, and make sure there are no real tight bends right after the motor. I think the general rule of thumb is you want to come out straight 12 inches from the motor before you do any turns. And so basically I've got 14 inches or so between the top of the booth to the ceiling, and then when it goes up in the attic, it's a gradual turn. It's not like a 90 degree, it's like more of an arc. So plenty of airflow going up. While I had this apart, I cleaned the motor. It did have a bunch of spray overspraying stuff on its painting dust, so I cleaned that off while I had it. But now it's working much better. I did lose a little depth because I had to put the motor back here, so the booth came out about 8 inches. So now I don't have as much depth in the room, but that's no big deal. But now this should work the way it should be. So if you're building your own spray booth, make sure you have plenty of airflow going into the room and your ductwork is big enough and there's no super tight bends. So this should work from now on. And later, if I want the option, I could actually turn this into like a downdraft booth also, because I've risen it off the workbench with some cinder blocks, because before it was too low. I didn't like it. I had the other one raised up too, about 12 inches, but this is raised about however thick a cinder blocks is. I think it's 6 or 8 inches. So I could technically put a smaller motor down in here with a filter on it if I wanted, and that also create kind of a downdraft. I'd have to duct it out to the top, but that's an option if I want. But yeah, a little update on that. So if you're building one of these, just make sure you have enough airflow, big enough duct work. If you can do a 6-inch, I recommend it, more airflow, and make sure there's no tight bends. And before you finish it all off like I did, make sure you're not, you know, put your hand to it. And if you feel any air coming back whatsoever, you have too much resistance, or there's some turbulence somewhere within the piping that's causing that air to come back at you. You shouldn't feel any air coming out of the motor at all. It should all just be sucking in. So a little update on that. And now my parent was a little tighter, but I still have a nice, you know, I took all this crap down, I dusted it all. Man, I've been doing this like for 5 hours today, but it's a good time to do it between projects. And so that's it for that. A little update on the spray booth and what to look out for. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.